Hello and welcome back to Unpopular People. We believe that listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success. Today in our interview, Isaac. Isaac is a student at Griffith University at the Gold Coast in Australia, but he's originally from New South Wales. He's studying psychology and mental health in a master's degree. He will tell us more about this in this interview. If you want to find out more about Unpopular People, please visit our website www.unpopularpeople.com and sign up for our newsletter. And now enjoy this very interesting interview with Isaac. Hi Isaac.
Hey Ben, how are you?
I'm
happy
very
to
well.
be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming over.
No, happy to have come. Happy to spend some time with you and to catch up again.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like Isaac brought us some things from the Gold Coast because we had to leave very quickly at some point, and we weren't able to bring all our stuff along. Now we're back in New Zealand, Elisa and I, and Isaac was so nice to bring us some of our gear, some of our instruments. He brought us our speakers and clothes, and it was so good.
Yeah, no, happy to help out a friend, and it was all good. I'm excited to be here in New Zealand. It's been really nice, lovely weather.
Yeah.
Been really having a good time, loving the views and the hills and the people. The people are awesome. So I'm glad I was able just to help out, bring you the essentials that you needed or left behind. It was no trouble. Happy to help.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we were neighbors back at the Gold Coast in Australia. And that's how we got to know each other, and we became really good friends. And I know a lot about you, but I also want our listeners to find out a little bit about you. So maybe you can start by telling a little bit about your childhood, about your the memories you have from that time, like how you grew up and where you grew up.
Nice. Yeah, so I grew up in New South Wales, out in the suburbs of Western Sydney. I grew up in a house of 7 people, which included my mother's parents, my 2 parents, and I have 2 younger brothers. So I'm the eldest of 3 boys. I'm currently 24, and my childhood looked a lot like a typical suburban childhood. And I grew up fairly religious in the Latter-day Saint organization, or the Mormon Church. Currently not, I wouldn't say I am too heavily invested or currently practicing, but it was something that I grew up with, and something that obviously has affected my life. But so that involved like going to church, Sunday school, seminary classes, and then with school I went to a private school. I went to a Christian private school, which it was just because my parents thought it would help with education and be more aligned with what we were learning on Sundays and whatnot. And yeah, had a really good time with my brothers growing up. Played a lot of games, had very similar interests. Did a lot of swimming when I was growing up. I enjoyed that. What else did I do? Oh, I played the piano as well when I was younger. Played the piano growing up. I played for my classes and stuff. So for my senior years, I had to do like some performance pieces, which were really nice. So getting into what I'm doing now in relation to how I grew up, I got into mental health purely because originally I wasn't very interested in people. I didn't really care. I thought, as like a typical young teenager, I thought like I knew everything. I thought that the world revolved around me and that people weren't really necessary. Everybody else was just extra. But now realizing that I'm really nothing and that everybody else is what makes this whole experience worth it. And recently, going into like psychology and mental health, I just really opened up my brain and realized how messed up I am. So it's been really nice.
Like we all are.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm really appreciative for that. yeah, so I just finished my second year of psychology out in Griffith. Going into my third year would be February, and then on my fourth year I'll be doing my master's in mental health practice.
Nice, yeah, that's very cool. I'm very excited to hear more about this.
Yeah.
Let's go back a little bit in the story, and you told us that you grew up with 7 people in your household. Mm-hmm. It's quite impressive. So how was it living with your grandparents and your parents together?
Yeah, it was. Oh man, I think if anything, that really helped with my upbringing, because I never really needed like a nanny or anything. So it was just my grandparents. But when I was much younger, I was just living with my parents. My brothers weren't born yet, so I'm talking when I was like 3 years old or whatnot. And then I used to have like a nanny. But like growing up in my household of 7 people, we'd come home. My grandma, when we used to live closer to school, my grandma would come and pick us up from school. Then we'd come home. She'd have food ready. She'd like really let us do our own thing. But you know, if we needed anything, we have grandma right there, and grandpa would be coming home shortly. He usually comes home at like 3-4 o'clock, and then mum and dad would come at like 5-6 o'clock ready for dinner. So I guess if anything, it really didn't feel like it was crowded, because luckily my parents were able to. We lived in a pretty spacious home, so we all had our own rooms. We were able to do our own things. But yeah, it was really nice having my grandparents around. And I think if anything, if I didn't have my grandparents around, I wouldn't be who I am today. I owe a lot of my personality and a lot of my characteristics to my grandparents. So I'm really glad that I was able to grow up with them.
Mm. And so your grandparents, they're from your mother's or your father's side?
From my mother's side, yeah. Okay. So they are from El Salvador.
So your mother is from El Salvador, or was she born in Australia?
No, my mom's originally from El Salvador, so she was born in El Salvador, and then they moved to Costa Rica when she was very young, and then finally moved to Australia when she was like 8 years old.
Okay, cool. And your dad, is he from El Salvador as well?
No, my dad's from Ecuador. So my dad was born in Quito, Ecuador, and he left there when he was super young as well. I think he moved to Australia when he was only like 2 years old, but he was born in Ecuador.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I mean, I know all those things, but I'd still ask you those questions so our listeners get to know it a little bit as well. And I think it's interesting because I think in the culture in South America or Central America or Latin America, it's more common to have like the whole family living together in one place. So do you think that was the reason why this worked out so well?
Oh man, you know, even in my psychological studies, I did a social and cultural psychology class this past trimester, and I had to do like a little bit of like research on my own cultural background, and it does talk about like collectivist cultures and like South American, Central American countries being more like collectivist, having a collectivist culture. And basically what you were saying, like families stay with families, and then basically everybody around them is also extended family. Like I'm used to having, well, I shouldn't say used to, but my extended family on my grandfather's side is all living in Canada, and they are all very close, very like it's basically their own community, and it's just our family. But I do think because of our culture, it did help having them around, and we didn't really think too much of it. If anything, we were just like, why doesn't everybody have their grandparents living with them? Mm-hmm. And plus it was just them. They didn't really take up too much space, and yeah, it was really nice having them around.
And it was probably a big help for your parents too.
Yeah, like you'd have to talk to them. Like I have no idea, like the amount of all I can come from is like from a child perspective and like from a grandson/son perspective, like realizing how much help and how much influence they were around. Like basically looking back at my life, my mum basically never cooked lunch, right? Mm-hmm. Because she would never need to, because my grandma, she'd be at work and my grandma would be at home. She'd make lunch for us as soon as we come back from school or whatever, and then mum would make dinner. So I'm sure that's, you know, having that ease of mind from my mother, like knowing that her mother is looking after her kids while she's at work, able to do her own thing. And my mum's been very grateful for that, because I don't think it's in my mother's personality just to be a stay-at-home mother. You know, nothing wrong with that. I just think it's not for my mum, and it definitely wasn't for my dad. So.
And it also gives both of them the chance to earn money.
Exactly.
And that's like taking care of like the whole family while someone's taking care of the kids during the day. So it's, I don't think it's a bad thing in general. Like,
no, me neither.
You handle it quite well. And as long as like the, the communication between each other works out well, I think that's just a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think for them, their whole goal was basically, they want to set us up. They want to set me and my brothers up. So they're going to work harder so that we don't have to worry, and then hopefully that cycle continues. I want to work really hard so my family doesn't have to work too hard. So I know that's why both of them really want to work, and that's why they continue working, continue to push each other. So I'm grateful that my grandparents were able to help with the load of like having 3 boys around the house. But it was really good.
So what do your parents do like for work? Are they also psychologists?
No, so my mother is a nurse. She works in aged care. She works for a nursing home, pretty well established nursing home out in New South Wales, and she's basically just a head manager. Everybody reports to her. And so she worked her way up from nursing all the way up to her position that she is now. I don't know too much. Basically, it's just a manager, organization stuff. And my dad works in IT, account management, and a lot of security. He does like a lot of security for different companies. He was doing like police bank security stuff, basically all IT work. So that's where my dad's field is at.
And your brothers, what do they do?
My brother underneath me, who is he is 21 years old now. He's working with my mum just at the aged care facility. I'm not sure what particularly he's doing. I think he just helps around secretary stuff or cleaning, or I'm not sure. Or working with the COVID stuff, I think, is what he also does. Then my youngest brother is working at a Dan Murphy's, which is just a liquor place. And the reason he's doing that is because it's so close to the house. Like, we're talking a few meters maybe. We have the petrol station right next to us, and then the liquor store. So he just walks to work, like not even a 5-minute walk. So on his breaks, he just goes home to his room. So, and that's what he's currently doing. And he's also my 21-year-old brother, he's also in TAFE. He's doing a when you do like art design for like billboards and stuff. Or
cool. And I already heard that you live with your grandparents, and I also know that you have a very good relationship with your other grandparents, right? So and maybe you can tell our listeners what one of your granddads, and you can explain the backstory, did on his 80th birthday.
So for my father's father, so my grandparents on my father's side, they are much older. I shouldn't say much older, but they are older than my mother's parents. So my grandfather, my father's side, is 80, and then I think my grandmother is 73. And for his 80th birthday, my parents bought him skydiving tickets, and we were able to go skydiving together. I went for my 24th birthday, and he went for his 80th birthday, and we both jumped out of a plane together. It was super awesome. Definitely a dream come true for me, just being able to be up in the sky, and pretty scary in terms of what other people think is scary, but it was definitely a dream come true for me. So much adrenaline, so just out of this world. It was really cool.
And what was the scariest part?
That's the thing. I tell people all the time and they never believe me, but there was no fear. It was pure excitement, pure adrenaline. The worst part about it was just waiting. I just wanted to get up in the plane and jump out. I was like there at the front, like waiting for the gate to, like waiting for the door to open, like, get me out of here. Let's jump. Let's go. Yeah. Like, I guess it would have been scarier if it was me having to pull the parachute, like all pressure on me. But basically I had the guy behind me, and if he didn't pull the parachute, we were both going to die. So all the pressure was on him. I was there just to enjoy the ride. Obviously, I know things can go wrong, and I'm glad nothing went wrong, and I hope nothing ever goes wrong for those people doing that, because I think it's a great hobby. But I really didn't feel any fear, and I think it's because this is just going a bit on the side, but I suffer from sleep paralysis, so my amygdala is still firing when I'm trying to fall asleep. So I feel a lot of excess chemicals that are just constantly firing, and that releases pure fear, pure like being terrified and just being completely horrified. So that to me is fear. So when I feel that, that's when I know I'm like scared. So when I was doing skydiving, I know that feeling was not even close. It was pure excitement, adrenaline, and just really keen to jump out of the plane and fulfill a like childhood dream.
And how did your grandpa react? Like, was he also not afraid at all?
Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of talking to him about that, and then he was saying, yeah, I think he's very much an adrenaline junkie as well. But you know, I think just because of like life and circumstances, he doesn't really do those kind of things. So I think my parents really did a good job, like just getting a gift for him so he can able to have an experience like that. And luckily, yeah, at the skydiving area, he wasn't even the oldest person to do skydiving. Apparently,
How old was the oldest person?
Apparently, the oldest person was like 90 something, like doing skydiving. I'm like, that's crazy to me. So,
and do they tell you anything about like did they test you up front, like your blood pressure or heart rate or anything?
Nothing. Yeah, you literally just fill out the form, and if on the form, if they see any red flags, then they might test you. But no, once you fill out the form and you say that you're feeling healthier, you're feeling good, you don't have any...
It's your own responsibility.
Yeah, exactly, basically, yeah. So they're not held responsible, basically, unless the parachute dies. And I figured out my life is only worth $2,000. Yeah, so that's the only coverage that they give, apparently, unless you buy, like, the bonus pack or whatever, which is crazy to me. I'm reading the contract, I'm like, man, if I die, you only get $2,000 for my life, so...
Oh, shit. Yeah, well, you don't get the $2,000.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't even me. So,
yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, but it's. I mean, I've never done it, but I'm very curious. I definitely want to do it. Because
man, have you done like hot balloon or something like that?
No, hot balloon. Yeah, but it's like hot balloon would be a bit different because I actually like the fast part of it. You know, like the falling down. I like free fall towers and roller coasters and stuff. But it's more like if I'm caught in like a small space, that's what would freak me out a bit more. Yeah.
Yep. No. I think like bungee jumping is also something. I haven't done that either. I haven't done bungee jumping or like what's it called, like parasailing, where you just like fall gradually down a cliff. I haven't done that either. But the funny thing is that you mentioned about like falling is that you only really feel the fall for a little bit. It's not very long because you're going so fast. Before you know it, he's already pulled the chute, and then once that, it goes a lot slower, but it's still like so fun just to look up in the sky and just be like, man, I'm in the clouds. Like the birds are like right here. It's so crazy. Yeah. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed that. Definitely worth doing if, you know, have the money, have the time. So,
yeah. No, that's cool. Or if you get it for your 80th birthday.
Oh, yeah. Or if you get it as a gift. Yeah. And anybody listening and you have friends that enjoy adrenaline junkie things like going on roller coasters or they're doing anything that gets the heart pumping, I would 100% recommend skydiving.
Do you think it's also something for people that want to like maybe overcome fear in their life or something? You know, do you think it could be like used as therapy in some cases? I
think so. The kind of therapy that you're talking about, from my knowledge, is exposure therapy. So there are different things that you can use exposure therapy for. I know people use it for like fear of dogs, fear of animals. And so, yeah, like something for like fear of heights. I haven't really dived too deep into fear of heights, but I think it has to do something with explaining that whatever the person's fear is, whatever is blocking that or prevents them from doing something, if you can show that that's not really the case, I think that also helps with their fear. But at the end of the day, they'll have to keep doing that and keep basically proving themselves wrong with the fear that they have is... And I shouldn't say it's an illogical fear, but it's something that may not necessarily happen, which could help with their fear and confronting their fear. But I think there are so many methods to overcome whatever fears you have. Like, you know, people have fear of just doing, like, you know, improving their lives. So, and that's tough as well. Like, how do you do exposure therapy to help somebody improve their life? It's just some people some people have what it takes to do it by themselves, and some people need a little bit of push. So I think with skydiving and fear of heights, I'm not sure, because you could really fuck somebody up by exposing them to something for too much. Like they could have a heart attack like in the plane or like going into the plane. So I'm not too sure.
Okay, yeah, I think it might depend on also the person and the therapy
absolutely.
and
yes,
what's
exactly.
the actual case.
And what the goal is, right? Like maybe if the goal was specifically heights, maybe do something different. But if it was falling out of a plane, which I feel like a lot of people have that fear. So yeah.
Now, also, I think like my question was directed towards the idea of if you like some people really struggle with overcoming like the last step to achieve something, you know, and even if it's, it's not like something achievable to fall out of a plane. You don't get me wrong, but it's I thought of, if sometimes people, because it's probably safer than many other things people do in their life.
That's exactly what I thought. Yeah, I think the procedure and everything that they go through, like the way they pack like the parachutes, is a very strict procedure. And you can look at the procedure. The professionals are packing up the parachutes. You see them pack the spare as well. So it looks very safe. And at the end of the day, the plane doesn't look and doesn't feel very safe, but it's designed for you to jump out.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, no, I agree. I think it's designed for safety. And so, yeah, I guess it just depends on like kind of what you were saying. Does it help people with like taking the right steps? I think people progress and do certain things at their own kind of pace. And I don't know if something, maybe if it's something that they're working towards, like if they want to like, do more exciting things, and if their goal is to go and, the biggest one is to jump out of a plane, I think that's a very high bar. High bar. So I think, you do like the other things first, and then you can see and prove. I think that's the purpose, is proving to yourself that you can do something. And I think that helps with progression, challenging yourself, and like overcoming fear, is finding out that you actually do have the potential, you actually do have the power to do something.
Cool. Yeah. It's I think that's a good way to explain it. Thank you very much. And I was also, you mentioned before you grew up in a religious environment with your parents. So can you describe this a little bit more? Like, how did it look like?
So I grew up, I said before, in the Latter-day Saint or the Mormon church, and I was there basically my whole life up until like very recently, that I'm just choosing to do things a little bit more differently. Not necessarily saying that I don't completely not believe everything, but I kind of have my own interpretation of certain things, certain doctrines, certain gospel principles that I take and do in my own life. But it's more of the sense of, not conforming to one ideology or one perspective, because, I think my personal philosophy is that there are so many perspectives in this world. How can any of them be right? If one is correct and all of them are incorrect, what's the point of having any of them? So I think for me is that if my perspective and the next person next to me's perspective can be different, but to us it's still reality and valid, therefore it has no value. So I see all of them as neutral and all of them as beautiful and as good as each one. Obviously there are some that are a little bit less than others, and maybe some that don't resonate with certain people, so I understand that as well. So, but just for me, I just feel like whatever resonates with you is that should just be what you do. And I think for me and most people, that's the religion of life, just going with what feels good for you and what's making you grow, what's making you better. I think that's the most important thing. So growing up, it looked a lot like, so in grade 9, so I would have been, how old was I? So I graduated when I was 17 years old, minus 3. So when I was like about 14, so from 14, so 13, 14 till about 17, I was doing seminary class, which is like basically like a scripture class from 5 in the morning till like 6:30. So that was every day or every weekday for
5 in the morning.
5 in the morning till 7, like 5 till 6:30.
As a 13-year-old.
As a 13-year-old, yes. So as 13 to 17 years old, yeah. So you're 9, 10, 11, and 12 were the years that you would do seminary. So from 13 to 17 years old, I was waking up 4 o'clock, 4:30, going to a Sunday school class to learn about scripture. And yeah, so I did that for 4 years. So that was every weekday.
That's why you sleep so long now.
Yes, I enjoy my sleep very, very much now. Yeah, exactly right. So that was what I did in my mornings for church. And then there'd be like youth activities like once a week or maybe on weekends for just depending on what age group you were in. And then Sundays you'd have church, go to church with my family, come back home and just have like a Sunday dinner and whatnot. But yeah, that's more or less what it looked like. Obviously the details are too much of a long story to get into, but you know, I think growing up it helped with developing good morality, good morale, good ethics, and kind of good life point of view. But I think now having my own life, having my own experiences, kind of having that as like a background is fine, but I realize it's not everything. And that's kind of how it was brought to me, is that this is everything. This is all you need. And I kind of just grew out of that, realizing that, no, this is not all I need. I need much, much more. And this is just one aspect of the millions and billions of things that there are out there to learn, love, and experience.
And how do you think people without this sort of like religious guideline that you experienced, how do you think people can still develop like a moral compass for themselves? Is this possible in your point of view?
I think it's very possible. I think the important thing for what I've realized is having good people around you. I think that's the main thing. So I think that from my parents' point of view, I respect them and love them very much. And I think from their point of view, it makes sense to bring your kids to a religious place because you know that the people that usually go there should be good, do demonstrate good ethics and moral values that you can visually see. You know, deep down, they may not be that, but from a visual perspective, from young children, they'll be able to see, this is a respectable person. He does this possibly because of his position, but you can see them doing these things. And I think from a parental point of view, it makes it easier. You know, it makes it easier to have good people around them being like, hey, look at this person. This is how he conducts his life. He's also very happy. Look at this. So I think, but yeah, so other people who may not have a spiritual, or I shouldn't say spiritual, maybe like a religious upbringing, I just think it's important to have good people around you. And that could be from your friends, your teachers, co-workers, family. So I think it's very possible to develop morality and ethics even without any religious background.
Yeah, and a bit of a provocative question, but so I heard you were saying that your parents chose this because of like the good people that you have around you in the religion. But unfortunately nowadays, and also in the past, of course, you hear like all those horror stories that happens in church, especially with children and young kids. Yeah. So how do you what's your reaction on this, or what's your
I think you know, people will continue to be people with or without the influence of God, whether you want to call it God or whatever. With or without that influence, I think people will still portray and still do things that, you know, aren't good or aren't seen to be of any value, and are actually destructive behavior is the word I was looking for. People will still, you know, conduct themselves even if they are in the best position in a religious thing. I don't think it matters where you are. I think if you just have these ideas, and it just depends on many factors. I think heaps of variables and that life experiences will makes people. So I think people who do that, it's just unfortunate that they, you know, misrepresent church or religious things, because I don't think that's what it's about. I think that's just a people thing. I think religion teach certain things, and I think people take it out of proportion. People put too many extra rules, or put extra emphasis on certain things that they want or don't want, and I think it kind of corrupts the main message. And I think really the main message of all religions is to love.
I mean, it's a good message in general, I guess, to love. And I also think you had a few very interesting and good experiences. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about like the things you were doing for church, or like for like the religion.
Thank you. I've had many ups and down like experiences, and I think the biggest one that I really hold dear to me is my time in Indonesia as a missionary. And it was just to be there, just to serve the people, and ultimately the goal is just to share the message of God, and that there is a person out there who thinks of you and cares for you and is trying to, you know, protect you in this life, and that that he has an individual who came to this world to basically sacrifice himself for your sins. And that's basically the message that we came out there. So I went to the Java island in Indonesia, and I was there for 2 years. So I was there from 2016 to 2018. So I was 18 years old till 20. And yeah, that changed my life completely. I now speak another language. I have connections over there that I would never ever have without that. So very grateful. And I think my biggest takeaway is to realize that there are good people everywhere. And I think that for me, like, really opened my mind and really opened my eyes to realize that, yeah, I don't have to be part of something or part of one organization to find all the good people. All the good people do not exist there. And that really, like, you know, showed to me that I need to broaden my mind. I need to broaden my perspectives to find these good people. And that was the biggest and the good experience that I took away from it all.
So Indonesia is very interesting for this mission as a missionary.
Yeah, as a missionary, yeah.
Because first of all, I thought about the language. Maybe you can explain how you handle this. And secondly, I as far as I know, it's Indonesia is basically or mainly Islam. Main religion.
Yes, correct.
So what difficulties did you face with this? And
so I'll start with the language. So firstly, basically once I got the message, it comes in like a massive letter saying, you're going to Indonesia for 2 years, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, I didn't even know this place. I knew it existed to an extent, but I was like thinking to myself, I don't even know the church sent people here. That was crazy to me. And then, so what they do is they put you through a 6-week program in Utah, in America. So I went through 6 weeks of language training and basically learning how to be a missionary. And they gave us really, really, really fundamentals, like counting and how to introduce yourself, how to introduce like what you're doing here. Like, you know, that's it, basically. As soon as I got there, man, I was hit with the crazy culture. The culture shock is so severe. Like, I couldn't even wrap my head around what was even going on. The heat, the climate, I was just so messed up. I was like, holy crap, I can't even believe I'm here. And the thing is, it's different from being on holiday, because when you're on holiday, you're like, oh, you know, I'm going to leave here 1 to 2 weeks, just enjoy my time here. I was thinking to myself, man, 2 years is like a little bit, you know, not too much. Like, now that I think about it in hindsight, 2 years isn't too long.
No,
but
2 years is quite a long time. Yeah. I mean, 2 years of COVID.
True that.
It was a long time.
Yeah,
so.
Good point, right? Like, it changed the course of freaking history now. Yeah. But yeah, so when I was there, I was, man, like, just thinking about it. I remember the first night being out with, like, you're always in twos, so you're always with another person, like your companion. So I remember being out my first night, just walking the streets with him, and he's like, oh, we're just gonna go visit some people, just say hello, you know, we don't have to do anything crazy. I remember people talking to me, and everything they said went over my head, and I was like, man, I learned nothing in 6 weeks. And I was like so scared, and realizing like I have to study a lot every single day. I'm gonna have to be learning this language because I live here now. I'm gonna be in this country for 2 years. If I get lost, I'm screwed. I don't have a phone. I don't have any access to internet, really. I need to just learn the language myself. So I think like this survival instinct took a while to kick in, but once I was out there, it like kicked in, realizing like, man, you need to step up, otherwise you're not going to survive here. And I feel like that really pushed me to help me learn the language, develop it fast. And I think the biggest thing as well, anybody listening, wanting to learn a new language, my suggestion is read books in that language, watch movies, listen to music in that language, and basically expose yourself 24/7. As much exposure as you can get is the key. Because while I was out there, English was music to my ears. You know what I mean? Like, I never heard English anywhere. So when we were at home, most of the people that were living in the house that I was living were Indonesian. There was one other American, but he chose not to speak English just to help out. And I was like obviously if I was desperate, I'm like, man, I can't understand a word you're saying. Can you explain it to me? Obviously he would. But I'm just saying, I think that exposure and that necessity, once you realize it's a necessity, when the brain realizes that, man, the only way to get what I want is to learn this language, it really, really helps.
Wow. And but yeah, so can you still speak it?
Yeah, so I can still speak it. Obviously it's not as good, or is not as clean, or is not as fluid, but yeah, I can still hold like a good conversation. I can understand a lot of what's going on. Usually the slang is like, even if you listen to English, people aren't really saying much. Yeah. There's the same with Indonesian as well. They say like one word, but there's all these other words that's just to make the sentence sound funnier, sound louder, sound more interesting. But kind of with that, yeah, so I can still hold and talk. I still have friends that I communicate online on like social media, and like I talk to them.
I can still is it terima kasih? Is it
terima kasih? Terima kasih is thank you.
And
yeah.
hati-hati is like slow down.
No, hati-hati is slow down would be hati-hati is like be careful.
Yeah, be careful. Yeah, be careful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember like hati-hati.
Hati-hati, yes. Hati-hati, yeah. They'd be like, yeah, be careful out there. It's a crazy place. Be careful, yeah. No, it's funny because like the direct translation, especially with Indonesian, is so funny. But like it's really deep if you think about it. Like for instance, matahari is the sun. But if you translate it, mata means eye and hari means day. So it's the eye of the day.
Oh, okay.
Right? And then for instance,
keep an eye on the day or something.
Yeah, like look, like the sun, right, is the light of the day. And what's the other one? Oh, you were saying terima kasih. So terima means to receive, and kasih means love. So to receive love.
Yeah, okay,
so
cool.
it is it's super interesting when you look at language. When you look at language like that and look at like direct translation and why things could mean certain things, and like the origination of why use these terms for like thank you for whatever. Because I think especially in English, I'm sure like you would know as well, when you're trying to talk English, there are much better German ways to say certain things.
Or English ways to say.
And exactly right.
Like other languages or, like, I mean, it's languages I find fascinating
Me
as well.
too.
So it's,
Yeah,
it's
me too.
impressive that you can speak Indonesian like perfectly. Did you find any relation to English? Like was there something where you could say like, okay, this is related to like something I know, or was it completely new to you?
Oh man. The only thing... Nah, man, not even. Like, the only thing that I could use that was even remotely close to anything that I had previously in my, like, vocabulary was, because I can speak Spanish as well, I was able to, like, roll my R's, like, which really helped a lot with, like, being able to pronounce things correctly. But in terms of, like, English, there was nothing in the English language that really benefits you to help you learn Indonesian, because in Indonesian, there's no, like, past, present tense. You just say what you want. There is, like, some tense, kind of, in, like, certain contexts, but not much. And, like, for instance, there's no he, she. There's just one word, dia, which is basically it, or him, or he, she, whatever. And so, yeah, it took a lot to, like, kind of realize the context of what people are saying. So, but it got to a stage where my Indonesian was actually better than my English. So I had I would call it like a scale. So my English was the best, then it was my Spanish, then it was Indonesian. While I was in Indonesian, I got English, Indonesian, then Spanish. And then during the mission, I almost completely forgot how to speak Spanish, because I was like, I'm never exposed to Spanish. So I almost lost Spanish completely. And then I was just speaking Indonesian, and then my Indonesian and English were like very, very close. And then by the end, by the 2 years, I remember coming back home and I would use Indonesian words while I was speaking English. So it got really crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah. But then, yeah, again, I think once I came back home, listening to my grandparents, listening to my parents, my Spanish almost came flooding back. And the same thing. So I'm sure if I go to Indonesia again, I should say, it'll all come flooding back. So anybody learning a language, don't feel like, oh, you're going to lose it straight away. It's all about exposure.
So, like, when you were in Indonesia, and like you were spending time with like other Mormons, like from your religion, or like what did you go to any social gatherings? Because I know like you like to hang out with people and you like to play games and you know, like do some fun stuff in between. Like, what fun stuff did you do over there?
Yeah, so mainly as a missionary, your main goal is just to be of service, more or less. So the Mormon church does exist in Indonesia, so basically anything the church needed, we'd be the extra hands around there. Any activities that the church wanted to do, the missionaries would be there to help out. And so in terms of like leisure activities, we'd have what's called a P-Day, like a preparation day, which is on Mondays. So Mondays, from when you wake up till about 6 p.m, you clean, get your hair cut, go out, do shopping, like basically hang out, email back home. And for fun, I really enjoyed just the food, going in and enjoying other kinds of food, looking at like cool touristy areas that would be close by, but you're not meant to go see them on your like time working. But yeah, so we'd hang out with like locals, we'd hang out with people that were from the church or people that were interested in joining the church. Very few people were interested in joining, and that's why we're out there to kind of increase interest and just find people that are either searching for something else, because I think, like you were saying before, it is predominantly Muslim. I think it's like 80+%, something crazy, and then there's Catholicism and then Christianity. So we just fall under the Christianity umbrella and then explain to them the message of like Jesus Christ and stuff, and if they were interested to see what this church has to offer, etc.
Catholicism not part also?
Oh
Christian,
yeah, it could be technically Christian, but they just classify themselves as their own. As just their own bracket of just being a Catholic instead of Christian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought Christian is related.
Technically, yes, but I was just saying, like, over there, the way they have their own reasoning or their own umbrellas of religion in Indonesia.
Okay, and people that were organizing this. So were they? Did you live at the church and did you get your food through them, or?
So yeah, so the way it works, it's all volunteer work. So basically, my parents had saved up from when we were born. They had what's called a mission fund, and they just put money in there and basically saved up for 18 years. So to go on an LDS mission, it costs around $10,000. $10,000
for 2 years.
Yeah, for 2 years, and basically you give the $10,000, whether it be in month by month or however you plan on doing it. So it's $10,000, and that covers no matter where you go. So basically you give that money, give the $10,000 to the church, and then they disperse it evenly among the
missionaries.
All the missionaries around the world. Yeah. So for instance, going to Germany is much more expensive than Indonesia. So yeah, my time in Indonesia, I didn't spend anywhere near $10,000, especially coming from Australia. My plane tickets would have only been a few $1,000s, and then to live there would have been much, much, much less. So you get an allowance every week. They give you a card, and then you just go from there. So I had my own allowance, and obviously you have your own personal funds as well, which I used, of course, because I wasn't just going to live off a church allowance. No way. Not my lifestyle. So yeah, so we had our own church funds, and through the church, they have like their own missionary homes, which usually hold 2 to 3 companionships. So you'd either be in a house of 4 people or maybe 6 people.
Okay, and how was it with like the leisure, like, or in the evening or something? Did you have a TV?
Yeah.
Did you have like a PlayStation or something?
No, none of that. So basically, my leisure activities consisted of just like studying.
Wow.
Yeah, studying the language and eating food and just trying to relax and like having, hopefully you would have a good companion where you can have good conversations. But yeah, so basically as a missionary, you sacrifice no TV, no internet, basically no leisure activities, like real work of being a missionary.
And I mean, for 2 years, that seems to me like a very long time as a teenager, especially when you're like coming from like an environment where you're allowed to, and it's in Australia, it's a very like leisure culture, so they like to hang out and do like fun stuff all the time. And then from going to from there to 2 years over there, did it feel right to you? Did you
that's
resonate with this? Like,
of course I was at even a very, very young age. I was curious with anything that I was doing, whether I was told to do it or if I was just doing it. I was just curious as to the origin of this idea, or the origin of why I'm doing anything. So yeah, while I was there, I understood the principle, if that makes sense. I understood the principle of, I know I need to like sacrifice myself to be a better servant of God, is how they used to put it. But I think for me, it honestly didn't make a difference, because I would continue to do things that I wanted to do, not necessarily follow the rules per se, but I found my own happiness and my own success, my own way. And to say that, is it right or is it wrong? I think that's all up to the person, because I think some people need that cleanse, or need that sacrifice, or need, like we were saying before, maybe they need to prove to themselves that they can do it. They can live 2 years without their phone. They can live 2 years without internet. Maybe some people need that. For me, it definitely didn't make a difference, if that makes sense. Like I gave it some time, like following every rule to exact letter by letter. I read the rule and I went exactly by it, and nothing changed. And then other days or other times where I wasn't doing any of that stuff, nothing changed, at least for me. So yeah, that's my experience with that.
And when you came back, was it probably a very nice time to come back home, see everyone, like not only your family but also your friends?
Yeah,
and, having everything accessible again.
I'm very blessed. I have two best friends that I grew up with from like grade 6 and grade 7. We still keep in contact, but they're my two best friends, Richie and Peter. Shout out to them. And it was so cool, like coming back home. They were there, at the airport or at home, waiting for me to come back. Like they were chatting with me, obviously, as often as they could online and like via email. But I was so happy, man, so happy to be back, and basically realize that, that time is done. Like it was very easy for me, maybe just as an individual, just to realize that time is finished. I don't have to continue to live or think that way. I can do the things that I want to do, because I realized while I was out there, yes, I am sacrificing my time for a purpose. There was something that's the whole reason I was out there. So when I came back, I needed to find new purpose, new meaning, and new reason, and to do certain things. And it felt very freeing, and felt obviously very confusing at that time as well. I was super, super, super confused, but very happy to have people around me, like my parents, my family, and my friends, that kind of allowed me to continue to grow, continue to experience, continue to challenge, and continue to do new things regardless of anything.
And did your brothers have to do like something similar?
So my brother underneath me, so he's Daniel. So Daniel, 21 years old, he went to Fiji, but then COVID happened. So he came back home, and he was at home for 2 months while being a missionary technically. And so he went to Fiji, came back home, and then he went to Melbourne. And he was basically under house arrest for almost a year. So basically his missionary life was on Facebook, being a missionary through social media. And so you'd have to talk to him about his experience. Like for me, that sounds like so bad. And so because I'm just lucky that I was able to.
Yeah, I mean, sitting at home and doing
that's
Facebook,
that's basically all they did.
I'd rather go to Indonesia.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, 100%. And so
Fiji.
Yeah, I would. Oh, he misses. He was so upset, like having to change from Fiji to like something like Melbourne. Melbourne's a place in Australia, so he didn't have to leave home. Like he was only the next state across from where he grew up. So obviously that was very hard on him, because seeing his older brother have whole 2 years in a different country, like different people and a different language. Obviously he wanted at least maybe something similar. And it helped a little bit, because my dad, he did his mission as well in Melbourne for 2 years, the whole time. Okay. That's where he went. So kind of helped him with that. But then my youngest brother, with my parents, it helped a lot seeing me and my other brother do it. So they don't really care what Jacob's my youngest brother. They don't really care what he does.
Okay, I had a similar experience with in Germany. You have to go to the army, or like back when I was 18, you usually have to go to the army or do like a social year or something. And but I have two older brothers, and because they like one was at the army and the other one did the social year, so I didn't have to do anything.
I
and
see.
It's not a decision of my parents; it's a decision of the state of the government. But that was I was very lucky with that. So yeah, shout out to Jacob.
Shout out to Jacob and Daniel. But yeah, exactly right. It kind of helped with that. And you know, my parents, I love my parents, and they're very flexible and very open-minded people, and I think they just want what's best for their children, and they see Jacob excelling in his classes in university. He's always been very academic, so they think, you know, especially right now, especially the whole COVID thing, they don't care. I shouldn't say they don't care about missionary work, but they understand that probably is not the greatest time right now to be a missionary with COVID and stuff and how it all works, and especially like restrictions around the world, and all of a sudden he can't come back to the country of his home. Like, it's crazy. So that's another reason.
And so like now this is in the past. Now you moved to the Gold Coast. You're away from home again, but not too far. But during COVID, I think it might have been a bit harder as well, like to see your parents back and forth.
So no, luckily, so I left home in February 2021. So COVID was kind of dying slowly. It was still around absolutely in 2021, but I was still at home for most of like the major COVID stuff in 2020. And that's when I realized, like, I was doing university in the room that I grew up in. Basically spent 20 years of my life in this room. Nothing wrong with that room. I love it.
-2 in Indonesia.
Yeah, exactly right. So 20 years in that room, and I'm just like, man, I need to change. I needed to do something. And I'm grateful for Indonesia because it triggered that thing inside me, realizing that I need that change. I need that constant push. Otherwise, I'm just going to get comfortable and I'm going to do nothing. So I realized I saved enough money. I had a job that I could transfer over. I had some savings that I could get myself settled for a little bit, then find a job out in Queensland. And it was either Queensland or Canada. Went to Canada. Didn't feel like it was the right place. I know eventually I want to be there for an extended period of time, but not right now. So, and I felt Queensland was a good place just to change up. And they, you know, applied for university, accepted. I applied for many universities, and they all accepted me. So I was like, man, I get to choose wherever I want to be. So this seems like a good place, good opportunity. And yeah, and I've been really, really fortunate. My mom helped me find the place where I'm staying now, really close to the university. I walk to university, and yeah, so it's all been very, very blissful.
Nice. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
And also, like with your master's degree, or not yet, but like soon, you're gonna have your master's degree in psychology and in mental health.
Mental health
as well.
Practice, yes, is my master's. Yep.
So, do you already have an idea what you're gonna do with it?
So my plan is to. I love learning. That's one big thing. So I don't know if I'll go into research maybe after my master's just to continue that kind of lifestyle. But I know I do want to work with people, whether it be counseling or being just a traditional psychologist. I want to get in front of the pharmaceuticals. I want to be the person that people can talk to either online through like websites like BetterHelp or wherever, where they can just come and chat with me. We can talk about whatever they want to talk about, but basically promote the message that they are enough without drugs or without any pharmaceuticals to help them. Obviously, I know chronic diseases and like chronic illnesses happen, and they do need, medication. Like that's something completely different from what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about people that maybe aren't doing enough right now, and they just need that push or that need direction, and be like, have you tried this? Have you thought of doing something this way? Because I know for a fact that just talking to different people, they help you under having different perspectives, and that could change. That could literally change your whole life. So that's the kind of psychologist I want to be.
And the perspective of like lifelong learning, what you just described, that fits perfect together.
Exactly right. That's lifelong learning, and basically realizing that the way they think right now is not the only way they have to think, and is not the only way they have to continue their life, and help them through any crisis that they're going through. I just want to be somebody that they can go to just to talk about whatever.
And so when you're done with all your studies and you become a psychologist or you go into research, and imagine you would be like, this is called unpopular people, but imagine you would be very popular, like with your work that you're doing. You publish the books and like millions of followers are like listening to your speeches in the stadiums, you know. Like, so what would you do with the popularity?
If I, at the end of the day, I just want to put my own spin in psychology. I know for a fact right now we are just scratching the surface, especially in consciousness or in any kind of psychology. I think we're at the breaking point, not the breaking point, like at a turning point, I should say, at a turning point in psychology. Like how many more people, it's a booming industry basically is what I'm trying to say. So I feel like it can go in millions of directions, and I just want to be part of it. Whether I be popular or not, it doesn't really matter to me. I just know I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of the movement that makes psychology or thinking psychologically normal. I don't want it to be taboo anymore. I want to be, if anything, I want to promote a world where psychological thinking is part of, is part of primary learning. Being in school, I think it should be like geography. I think there should be a psychology class, how to think broadly, or maybe a senior class or whatever. But I think it's super important just to have these social and psychological conversations, just to help people understand that they're not alone. I think it's super important.
So you think this is something they could implement at schools, for young kids?
I would hope so. I don't know how. I don't have like a plan or anything, but I would hope that it could be something that is implemented, just like math and English and anything else. I think it's a fundamental thing to understand. So that's kind of the message that I'm trying to bring across, is that psychology is fundamental.
Cool. No, I 100% agree. And yeah, well, thank you so much again for bringing over our stuff. And
it's all good.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this for a long time. We had, before we left Australia, Lisa and I, we had this like a conversation already recorded, but unfortunately, we wanted to make like a little like sideshow out of it.
Yeah.
It didn't work out, so I'm very glad that we have at least now this interview, and
awesome.
We can see where we go from here. And so thank you very much for bringing over the stuff. Thank you for your time. We know you're a busy
thank you,
person.
Ben. Thank you to everybody listening.
Yeah, and I mean, it's cool that you, between all your studies, you still find the time to spend time with your friends. And
always.
That's very cool. So I appreciate that. And I said enough from my side. We can have more and more conversations all the time.
Absolutely.
So just let people know, where can they find out more about you, or do you want to share something about your...
I think if anything, the biggest message that I want to bring across is... do anything and everything that you feel will benefit you, anything that you think will increase your mood in terms of happiness, whatever you deem happiness to be. I think progression and learning is everything. I think, like you were saying before, lifelong learning. I think that's the purpose, and connection and loving everybody. You can find me on Instagram with just through my name, or on Facebook. I'm on everything, but yeah, that's the main message, is just to love and be kind.